Awesome. Well, thank you all again, like we said, for being here. We're super honored to welcome folks for our special edition C plus B community talk, the veteran experience in Afghanistan. And we have got a awesome group of panelists and a facilitator here today that are going to lead the conversation. And we know that this has been something that's been on a lot of folks' minds. So we are just very honored to have them in this space talking about the veteran experience in Afghanistan. Before we get started, I am going to start with a land acknowledgement. And C plus B always wants to honor and ensure that we do this during our webinars. And so with that, we want to take a moment in the spirit of healing and peace to acknowledge and honor the indigenous peoples of the land upon which the University of Denver stands, the Arapaho, Cheyenne, and Ute tribes. And DU sits on this ancestral homeland of these tribes, of whose loss we both recognize and mourn. So, like the history of so many institutions in the American West, ours is a complex and sometimes painful history. And in recognition of this fact and underscore our commitment to inclusion and equity, we commit to listen and affirm the stories of all in our community. And with that, again, we're so honored to have these folks on the call today. And I'm going to kick it over to Ann Munch, who is a phenomenal human I've got to meet through this experience already in this virtual world. And with that, I will be on the chat. We will have a Q&A at the end of the session today, and I'll be sending reminders. And with that, I'll kick it over to Ann. Thank you so much for being here, Ann.
Thanks for having me, and it's wonderful to be here with everyone to talk about such an important event in our very recent history, and one that is, of course, rolling forward. So we are very much about creating a greater sense of belonging and inclusion. And after this last almost year and a half, all of DU has dealt with so much, but here we are, and we're excited to have you join us for this great celebration as we come back together in person and as a community. This is a webinar format which we have chosen because we love the feedback that we have received, and it's really important for us to continue to collaborate along these lines across the campus as we work as a larger DU community. So today we want to celebrate together, recognize those who we have lost, talk about lessons learned, and think through as a community how we navigate the highs and lows together as DU. I'm honored to introduce to you the panelists that we have today for our discussion on this important topic as we discuss Afghanistan and the fall to the Taliban government. So we have with us Erica Adkins, who is an assistant professor at the Graduate School of Professional Psychology at the University of Denver. We have Katie Bars, who is the Associate Clinical Professor in Military Psychology Specialty at DU and is the Clinic Director at the Sturm Center. Megan Fitzgerald is a doctoral student at the Graduate School of Professional Psychology. George Ganbold is a DU undergraduate student studying finance, and he's also on the rugby team. Paul Scudder is a master's candidate in international security at the University of Denver, and Damon Vine, who is the director at the University of Denver of Veteran Services. And my name is Ann Munch, and I'm the president of Ann Munch Consulting and a two-time University of Denver alum. So with that, we're going to go ahead and start our discussion on this important topic. All of the people on the panel that you are seeing on your screen have different roles in working with either veterans or service members and their families. All panel members are either veterans, service members, or family members themselves. So to address the panel first, I'd like to pose this first question to get us started. And that is, what have you heard about in terms of the reactions of what happened or is happening in Afghanistan? What kinds of things have people shared with you? And perhaps even what kinds of reactions are you personally experiencing as we have witnessed what's gone on in Afghanistan. And with that, I'd just like to open it up to anyone who'd like to start the conversation.
Well, I could, please go, George.
All right. I've been asked a lot once people have figured out I'm a U.S. Army veteran. They've been asking me about my reaction specifically and how I feel about it. My barber especially, every time I go see him, he's always asking me. Students here at the undergraduate level ask me about the situation as well. To be honest with you, it's difficult to state how I'm feeling because there's the lack of connection there, but I do try and speak to them in a manner that could be understood, which is human emotion, and trying to paint a picture of what really happened, give them a brief rundown, and then tell them my side of the story, but also recognize that my side of the story is not everybody's story. So I've been willing to share here and there, but there has been mass questioning, which I'm a little uncomfortable about because a lot of people ask me, and I feel repetitive and repeat myself, but I feel like it's necessary to tell to those people who are curious.
Yes. Thank you, George. Katie, what were you going to offer?
Thank you, George, for that. I was going to also say that what people have said has been varied. There's not one specific response for all veterans and service members. People have different responses to this, but overall, I have seen an increase in stress for a lot of veterans and service members and family members. I'm not a service member or a veteran. I am from a military family, but for me, I have personally experienced a fair amount of worry and concern for veterans and service members nationally and internationally.
Yes, thank you, Katie. That's there's so much concern for our veterans and service members as they, I guess, watch the transformation of something that many of them worked directly on or on the ground in Afghanistan, and just also the sense of the importance of military and who we are as a people. I'm wondering if anyone from a veteran perspective also would like to share additional experience around what it's like to watch this, or what people have approached you about. What has your own emotional response been to these events?
I think for me, I have sort of several different perspectives. So as a current service member, as a veteran, and also as a clinician working directly with veterans, specifically veterans who have served in Afghanistan, who've lost peers, who've lost friends, who've lost leaders, who've lost parts of their body, who've lost, just various things. I agree with Dr. Bars. There's a wide array of reactions and responses, anywhere from anger to sadness to hopelessness, to a sense of empowerment and justice in, we have to make this right. I know that what can be very difficult, and I've experienced hearing from service members and veterans, is the sense of, was it all worth it, or what was the purpose? And that can contribute to what we call moral injury, which is just kind of this sense of, when something happens or you have to engage in a behavior that goes against your moral code, that can create this just an overwhelming sense of sadness, depression, anger, again, disconnect from kind of who you are and what the mission was. So as a veteran myself, it's hard, having been in situations similar to this. I've not served in Afghanistan, but just listening to service members tell their stories and knowing how watching this unfold on national television, and feeling very powerless, and like there's not much that can be done.
Yeah, I would say that I'm really conflicted because we went over there to do something, and we did our part, and then it was like, well, why did we even go if it's just back to the way it was before 9/11. It just seems, it feels like, what was it all for?
Yeah, I'd like to back that statement. There's been many phone calls with my veteran brothers, and we asked the same question. What we were ready to, at one point on foreign soil, die for that soil because we felt there was a sense of purpose. There was a mission at hand, and we trusted that our leadership above many pay grades was doing the right thing. There was an ultimate plan. There was, you know, a positive light at the end of the tunnel, but the way that we did leave left us in shambles. And I don't mean just the veterans. The veterans were hit probably the hardest, but everybody else in the US population as well. There's a lot of questioning. There are a lot of tears because we remember those who gave the ultimate sacrifice. And it was tough. It was very tough, and a lot of frustration, a lot of anger. But then, you know, we come back together, and that's why we have each other. And I feel like the best tool that we have, we can call a random phone number and talk to somebody, but the veterans who are helping the veterans, I think, is the most influential in the situation because they understand, because they can connect, and then because we can come together and rally, because they were the ones to my left and right, and I didn't do it for some four-star general. I did it for my brother to my left and my right. So at the end of the day, we have to be realistic. We have to make sure that we're taking care of one another. And, you know, it's out of our hands. It's something that we can't control. And what we can't control is the way we react to the situation. And we have to be mature about it, even though we disagree on the inside, our morals, right? Whatever we stand for. And then just to think, if somebody was here that lost their life, you know, they would have the same reaction, but they would continue to live forward, move on, and continue another mission, because we know this isn't the end. This isn't just it. There's going to be future wars. There will be future conflicts, and we have to make sure we're ready and prepared, because right now we're complacent, we're mourning, but there's a big thing going to happen, and we have to be ready for that.
Thank you, George. The way that you speak so eloquently about the importance of the connection, you know, service member to service member, veteran to veteran, and that you share a common bond, even in what I hear you describe as this sense of powerlessness and kind of watching from the sidelines. And so that makes me wonder what kind of impact the withdrawal from Afghanistan is having on the mental health of veterans and service members. And we're talking about that a bit, but I wonder, are there any other thoughts about how this is impacting mental health?
Well, I think Dr. Adkins, oh, go ahead, Paul.
No, I was just going to say that I think the impact that I've experienced with my my brother veterans and sister veterans, that the withdrawal just kind of ripped the Band-Aid off, and before it was ready. And I don't know when ready is, because it's different for every person, but it just kind of, you know, that wound is fresh again of, you know, maybe you didn't think of that fallen comrade wasn't at the forefront of your mind. You know, they're there every day, but they're not, you know, right in your line of sight. And this kind of put them right back there, almost like it just happened. And it's been difficult for a lot of my friends that, you know, that serve there and other places. And it's kind of a, you know, I know guys who served in Iraq but never Afghanistan, but it feels almost the same. You know, they feel that trauma, that, you know, it's very similar in those aspects. So it's different for everyone, but I think that the speed that it took place was very unexpected. I think it wasn't. Yeah, I mean, we knew it was going to happen, but we didn't think that it was going to happen in 2 weeks' time, and definitely not the way that it took place. It's just it really hurt a lot of people in the way that it took place, because it made us feel like, well, why did we even go there? You know, it was just that sense of helplessness.
Yeah, I think that when I think of like mental health, like hopelessness feels like the right word in it. And for me, like when I was in the Army and I was actually in Kabul. And so like the pictures and the video feeds and stuff I'm looking at now are like, I was there. And it's just like an eerie feeling to look back on, and like really reflect. And like Paul, like you said, like those people you lost are now in the forefront of your mind. And I also feel like I hear a huge hopelessness, a lack of trust, like in our, government too, of like, who planned this? Like, and it feels like nobody did. And I know I've talked to a lot of people and we've come up with like, here's a really good way to withdraw out of Afghanistan. Why was this not considered? And so it feels almost like a slap in the face sometimes. And when the 13 service members were killed in Kabul, that felt very much like people who should not have died. And we can look back on through, the 20 plus years of war, and like, we've lost a lot of friends, a lot of peers, leaders, and kind of rationalize in a way, like what they died for, it made sense. It just like it in a weird way, it makes sense. But when you consider those people who died during the withdrawal, it just like, you can't make sense of it. And I think that's been really hard for a lot of people too. So yeah, just, I think like a sense of loss, because this war too was like a lot of us knew, like we went through this for most of our lives, and all of a sudden it's just over. And it ended in a way that doesn't feel good.
Yeah, I was also in Kabul as well. We did 3-month rotations through NKC and HQRS, and then HKIA, which we've been hearing in the news, the airport. It is a very eerie feeling, because you were there, you knew exactly the layout of the place, you knew the people that worked there. And it's not just our service members that were there, it was the Afghan nationals and our interpreters and everybody involved. We were just very small pieces to this puzzle, but there are so many more people that can't leave, and that they're there forever. And when you go to sleep at night, you think about those people, and you think about those brothers lost, those sisters lost. I don't mean to be exclusive. I was an airborne infantryman, and we didn't have females with us, so that's why I say brothers. And just a personal anecdote, I lost a friend there 2 years after I was there. He was with the 3rd Special Forces Group. And his dad was my Student Veterans Association director at Virginia Commonwealth University. And, seeing him hurt before the withdrawal and now reopening that wound again, literally a year and a half later, was really hard to see. Because I saw him struggle on a daily basis, come in to work when he didn't want to. And then he got better, and then I left and came here to the University of Denver. And now I can't be there for him, and I can only imagine what he's going through, and I check up on him, and he's not responding. I wish I could be there. You just feel like you're spread really thin right now, and all your brothers that you're trying to take care of, I feel like you're just not enough. What can we do? And so hopelessness again is, I feel like, the best word. And people ask, what are your biggest fears in life? It's, the heights, a spider, a snake. To me, it's being alone and being hopeless. You can't do anything. And so you know, my worst nightmare has manifested itself. But we all know, you know, I'm not trying to make this fluffy, but whatever comes our way, we'll get over it and we'll continue forward.
George, I'm really glad you brought up the point about the interpreters and the Afghan nationals, because that's a lot of what you know, I'm hearing folks struggling with is, you know, as soldiers, you know, we make promises, we make vows, you know, our integrity, our word is you know, very important to us. And when we tell someone, hey, if you work for us and you help us with this particular mission, we're going to guarantee your safety. We're going to guarantee that you'll get to come to the United States and we'll keep you safe. And when we failed to do that, man, that hits hard. That hits very hard. I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. And, you know, for a service member to not be able to keep your word, you know, and watching this unfold on national television, I think powerless doesn't even begin to describe the feeling. And yeah, I think that's been one of the biggest things. It's not even just about each other as service members. It's about those that became family, that did work for us, that did provide a service that probably kept many of us alive. And then to watch and feel as if we didn't do enough and we didn't hold up our, you know, didn't you know, say what we were, didn't complete what we said we were going to do. Sorry.
No, right, Erica. I think that what you said is right on. You know, we took those people that were there helping us, and you know, we were over there for, you know, for a limited amount of time, and we went home. They stayed home. They were home the whole time and put themselves and their families in danger every day. And we put ourselves in danger while we were there. And I think that it was just kind of something, maybe it was something that we consciously ignored, that they were what they were sacrificing by helping us. And, you know, we looked at the bigger picture of, okay, they're helping us because they want a better future for their family, for, you know, their kids, their grandkids, their, you know, great grandkids down the line. And they sacrificed, I mean, literally everything that they had. And in many cases, their own lives. And we talk about honor in the military as, you know, that's forefront. And I don't think that we have upheld that when it comes to the people that helped us that were over there.
It's an amazing discussion, and part of what I'm struck by is how this is still very present. This is still very new. This is still very raw, and the way that people are discussing this is, you know, genuine to that. And I'm gonna take one of the questions that just popped in to the chat and see if the panelists can address this as well. It says that, you know, it's so important to hear the service member perspective on issues like this, but the questioner often worries about raising topics that might be highly personal, political, distressing. Is there a way that you can recommend that we broach topics like this one to see if someone is interested or open to a discussion, but that is still respectful and caring of that person's experience? Wondering if anybody has a perspective on that.
Yeah, I would say I think it's really important for us to reach out to veterans and service members. They may or may not be in a place where they want to talk about it, and then we need to respect that boundary. But this is the time to reach out. I think to not reach out is leading people to feel isolated, like George has talked about, and alone. We know that the VA has received a dramatic increase in calls to the suicide hotline since what happened in Afghanistan occurred. So it's extremely important for us to be reaching out to people right now. We're not always going to say the perfect thing, but it's important that we say something, and also respect their boundaries on what they do or don't want to talk about.
Thank you, Dr. Bars. That's
I think for me, it's if it feels genuine, then it's fine. And people not everyone knows how to ask the right, word it the right way. I don't know how to word things the right way. And it's just if you can understand that the question and the interest is genuine, and it's more than just, it doesn't fall into the thank you for your service, which has gotten to be so cliche that, I mean, I don't know how the other veterans on the panel, react to that, but it just seems like I don't know what to say a lot of times. And sometimes I say thank you. Sometimes I say you're welcome. I mean, you just don't know what to say. And because it's so, well, oh, you served, oh, thanks for your service. But they don't really understand what they're thanking us for. And sometimes I'd rather they just not.
Yeah, I appreciate the platform here today. We need to have more places like this, because this is the first I've ever heard of, the separation between a student and the university and the veterans coming together. We need to create more places like this, because at the end of the day, the classroom's not a safe place to talk about it, even though they say, we respect everybody's thoughts. Well, I don't feel that way. And then when I bring up subjects pertaining to the topic itself in that course, then, sometimes I get some pushback for just challenging ideas. So let me put up how I feel about the withdrawal in Afghanistan, and that won't go well. So we need to have places like this, and if we're ready, we'll come. And then that's why the three of us, the four of us, the five of us, the panelists, we're here today, is we've pondered about this, we've talked about this with our veterans, and we're ready to talk about it. And other people might not be, and that's okay. So give them time. Just let them know you're there. And like I said before, the veterans need to help each other. We need to keep each other accountable. Accountability is a big thing that we have in the military, and it is the standard that we set for ourselves, and it's very high. And I just don't see the accountability transfer over to the decision makers. And there's a big case going on about that now. And, if we have a standard set for the lower level, why doesn't it apply to the higher level? Why are there exceptions? And, it's based purely off of performance, the military. It doesn't matter what you look like, how you speak. We're all walks of life. We're 45 years old. I was a 17-year-old kid that came in. I was a U.S. immigrant. And I came here with hopes to better myself. And I was 4 years old when 9/11 happened. I wasn't even in this country yet. And so just to feel the power, the patriotism in this country, it led me to serve. And then the avenues that the military creates for you if you have nothing, and which I had nothing. So at the end of the day, the veterans need to help each other. But if they're ready, and if you ever get into a situation, a scenario where someone can talk to you about it and be respectful about it and be genuine about it and be authentic about it, instead of just the facade that they put up because we're in public, I don't want to deal with any of that, as Paul said.
I think I hate to hear George talk about the classroom not feeling like a safe space, but I would agree. I think there are many many places that don't feel safe for us to discuss things like this, because to be honest, I don't know that the world at large is ready to hear our opinions on some of these things. And if it's not politically correct or it's controversial in some way, then there's a push to silence. And so what I would say is, absolutely ask the veteran or service member, like, hey, I would really be interested in hearing your experience. Is that something that you're open to talking about? And if they say yes, be prepared to be uncomfortable. You might not like what they have to say. And that if you're uncomfortable by the statement that's being made, think about what that service member has had to go through that has put them at that point that they're making that statement, if that makes sense. And so just, I agree with George, creating these spaces where it is safe, where veterans, service members, supporters, allies, family members, whoever can have these conversations where there's not the fear of reprisal, where there's not the fear of, academically, if I speak up and say this particular thought that I have about this issue, is there going to be retaliation against me? And yeah, just being able to have those frank discussions and being okay with being uncomfortable.
That's so well said, Dr. Atkins. And one of the other questions that came in is specifically about, DU it's a unique community, especially when it comes to veterans and the military psychology specialty and the STERM Center. And so one of the questions is, how can we support our veterans and service members, and what should we learn from this conversation? And I think I really hear you saying, one of the things I heard that I learned from is, if I'm going to ask, come with a genuine heart and be prepared to hear the truth. And if I'm going to offer to create that kind of environment for someone, that's a critically important thing. And I had best make sure that I'm prepared, for the discussion, because just even from what we're talking about today, this is so new and it's so difficult for all of us. George.
I'd like to address Sue in the chat here. You are right. If the university is going to be inclusive and send emails to us, making us aware of certain situations, because at the end of the day, we're humans. We can't, think of everything. We're going to make mistakes. So yes, I think the faculty does need training. And one of my classes, a professor brought up the withdrawal of Afghanistan. They were talking about decision making and all this, and it was a little too fresh to just bring that up, because before that she didn't know I was a veteran, and so I had to sit there the rest of the class thinking about it, because I don't want to use the word triggered, but brought back some memories, and it brought back some memories, and I couldn't focus on the rest of the class because I was overwhelmed with emotions at that point. And she didn't, it was intrinsic, it was just a question that she asked herself. I don't know how to say it, but it was no one answering the question. And so that made me pretty darn uncomfortable. And, is it too soon? Yes, it's too soon, especially it's been a month. So I think, yes, Sue, the faculty does need some training here, and fast, because this is a time-sensitive matter.
Damon, I'm wondering if you have a perspective on that question, or anything else that we've been discussing around, being a supportive presence to veterans and service members at the University of Denver, and perhaps this question of how do we make sure that everyone is just more aware, more competent, perhaps trained up a bit on being sensitive to the needs of veterans and service members.
Yeah, and I've kind of been sitting back. I want to take in as many of the panelists' comments as I can. My office is here on campus, and probably 2 to 5 veterans a week come to my office talking about this topic, as well as other veteran issues. And sometimes when it comes to this topic, people expect veterans also to have all of the answers, and we don't. We just don't. We're as confused and befuddled as everybody else. And that extends to the professional world too, not just our student veterans, right? They're the ones in the classrooms, like George was saying. Once you're identified as a veteran, you could be asked these very direct questions. And I think that's a good thing. I think that we do want to ask our veterans these questions and get those voices out there and heard, but then we actually have to hear our veterans when they're talking too. Just like Erica said, when you ask a veteran a question about what it's like to serve in the military, what it's like to watch watch a country that you fought in fall in less than 72 hours, I think was our time frame. That in and of itself is just, it's hard to put into words. I was in Zabul province in Kalat, and it's not even recognizable from the time when I was there. So when we talk about supporting our student veterans, and it extends beyond that, we should acknowledge that we have family members on campus, partners, children, brothers and sisters who are trying to understand how to support their families. And the best thing that I think we can do is when you ask a veteran a question, listen. Take time to sit back and listen and hear what they're saying. There's probably anger, there's probably fear, and there's a lot of confusion. Every day in my office, there's confusion about what happened. And then there's always a sense of completeness when it comes to the service, starting from basic training and boot camp. You complete the mission. You complete what you set out to do. And I think part of what we're looking at here is an incomplete mission. We didn't resolve the matter. And that is a difficult thing to digest. And I think it takes veterans talking to each other too. I have many confidants from the Navy who I still reach back to, some active, some veterans, who we talk about this feeling of not having completed our work. And it's not a good one. So my message to my student veterans here is I'm here for you. My message to my faculty and staff partners is that I'm here for you and we're here for each other.
And Damon, that's a really great point that I've heard a lot too, is that feeling of we didn't complete the mission. And as an Army behavioral health provider, one of the things that struck me on my most recent deployment, as well as listening to the panelists here today, and then talking with some of my veteran clients, is something similar happened in Vietnam. Something similar happened, in the mid 2000s with Iraq. Something similar happened on a smaller scale in Syria, and now Afghanistan. And so, we're trained and we're taught, and it's ingrained, like, you always complete the mission. And, we had a specific mission in all of these different arenas. But for me as a behavioral health provider, I'm wondering, and this is just kind of a, I don't know, hypothetical or pondering, but wondering what can we do earlier on, whether it's in boot camp or different types of training, where we can prepare service members, mentally to what to do or how to make sense of and still find meaning in the mission if it doesn't get completed in the manner in which we were hoping it would. And I don't have an answer to that. It's just something that I've been pondering lately, as because this is such a powerful experience when we're given a task and we're sent somewhere to complete the task, and then it falls apart. That's, man, to feel like a failure, to feel like we let people down, just so much wrapped into that. So that's something that a lot of this is bringing up for me.
So I think what you just asked, I'm going to give it a shot here. During basic training, it's to bring everybody from all walks of life together and have the same mindset. And it doesn't matter where you are at that point. It is, the drill instructor's, the drill sergeant's job to ensure that you all think the same, because it's one of the places that is so pure, just working off of performance. There is no room for diverting from the mission. But as you continue throughout your Army career, and then you start, meeting some leaders, being put in scenarios that are difficult, and sometimes the mission doesn't get accomplished how you intended to. And we have a saying, no plan goes past the first bullet that comes at you. And that's why we have fragos. That's why we think on the fly, and that's why we're ready. But at the end of the day, the mission is still very important. It's not the end result there. It's how we got there. It was the process. So I think we need to have soldiers, veterans realize that and make it applicable to the real world as well, because it is a transferable skill. You do want that degree, don't you? How you get there, it's not going to be a straight line. It's not how you intended it to be. You can't plan out 4 years perfectly. And so I think they mean well in the beginning during basic training, but that thought is evolved eventually when you do get to your unit, when you do go on missions. And the risk is not a college degree anymore. The risk is your life or your friend's life. And so that becomes that much more exponentially important. And so you take it so seriously that when it does transfer over to other parts of your life, then you're ready. And even though a piece of paper doesn't mean as much as my life, I will continue to push and finish what I have to do. And that mental resiliency is what is taught. But when we are human beings, and when we are met with this much conflict, when we are met with this much confusion, then it can really put somebody into a paralysis state, and we don't know what to do, because we had a team at one point and now we're out, and it feels like sometimes we're alone. And so that's why I keep harping on the veterans helping veterans, because we need a team at the end of the day. A good leader is going to make sure that everybody does their job, everybody's taken care of, and everyone's a leader. And so we can all reach out. We can all make sure that everybody's taken care of at the end of the day.
Thank you for that, George. I want to completely recognize that I'm a civilian who has never served. That being said, I've spoken with many veterans and service members regarding this. And I think it's really important that we, as civilians and as a society, help veterans and service members, support them, and let them know that no matter what happened when Afghanistan fell, their service was meaningful, it was impactful, and it did help the quality of life of people. So I believe that is also true, even in the midst of what's happened in the last month.
Along the lines of this discussion, we've got a couple questions around, is there something that we could be doing for veterans by just discussing what they might face? Is there any kind, in classrooms or things that kind of come up, any kind of an orientation for them? And how to kind of address this and talk about these things. And I just have to say, this is really reminiscent of, when I think about that subclass of veterans and service members who have experienced sexual assault, and this surprise, the interruption to their service and the interruption to their lives, and the way that things can become derailed and they can be surprised in a classroom or in a discussion, or in a commander's call or whatever it is. It's that question of how do we, to the extent that we can, and for the things we're not powerless over, how do we best prepare our veterans and service members for those difficult reminders that may be right around the corner? And what services or resources do we have for them?
Yeah, and so this particular topic just came up this year, right? So we didn't have a lot of time to roll this into our orientation, but we do have a yearly orientation that takes place in the fall quarter. And we discussed generally that there is going to be some difficult conversations in classrooms. And I think our student veterans come from a perspective of diversity that is not necessarily aligned with higher ed's idea of diversity. And that is a difficult thing to discuss, because we talk about branch of service, and George, you disclosed that you migrated here. So when we talk about diversity, we're almost comfortable in a way that's uncomfortable for higher ed. And so we do discuss it. The issue is when it's particularly about Afghanistan and the withdrawal, we haven't had time to prep for that in this particular area. But in the Veteran Services Center, we have my office, student veterans come and talk to me. We also have a community partners office where there are resources available. We are working diligently to get STERM Center time in our community partners office to make that resource available to our student veterans, dependents and family members. So these things take time to unfold, they take time to set up. We can't just pop a clinic into our community partners office. We have to make sure we follow certain guidelines. So these things will take time to unroll. The students who come to me most often are the students who are actually doing the best in class, right? And if I may, the students that you see on this screen are typically the students who are coming to my office, and I think these are students who are doing better at having these discussions. George, I talk very frequently with about a lot of these topics, and George is not afraid to correct me when I'm wrong on something either, and that's what I really respect about our relationship. Is he'll say, "No, man, you're messed up on that. Correct it," right? And so we have that open relationship, and sometimes veterans are that way in class too. And so when we talk to professors and when we start working on our professor training, our faculty and staff training, maybe an area that I should really focus on is how veterans are taught to speak, right? I was taught to type in bullet format, right? Get your point across and get out. So these are issues that, focusing this back to Afghanistan, you may get a very pointed response that is uncomfortable. And you have to be okay with that uncomfortability too, because that veteran is living with that every single day. And so if you want to help veterans, I go back to hear them, listen to them. You don't have to have the right answer. They don't have to have the right answer. A conversation is the best thing to have.
And I just want to say thank you for people in the chat. I don't see you, so it's like out there, like asking how to support and stuff, because I think part of this too is coming out of the military. You don't really, like the way George explained, basic training is this long process. We teach you how to be a soldier, an airman, a Marine. You leave the military and you get like a couple days of like, here's how to write a resume, stamp your papers, see you later, like thanks for your service. And so it's, for some people, it's like 20 years of a lifestyle that they live, and now it's like a complete awakening of I do feel like an outsider in a way of I didn't learn how to transition out of the military, or I'm still transitioning out of the military while I'm also trying to start grad school. And so I just want to say thank you to like Damon and like everything that happens on campus and the rest of the university for like wanting to support veterans, because I think that is an area that is lacking in general, even on the side of the military, is like transitioning out of service is not really addressed.
Yeah, and Megan T bring up a good point. 20 years of your life, and so for veterans who just do 4 typically enlisted members, you're learning how to be an adult from 18 to 22, and you're learning in a high stress environment. It's not an easy thing. And if you're in the Navy, I can only speak from the Navy experience. I lived on a ship for 2 years. So these are things that are also, when we talk about, the transition piece, your formidable years are happening right there. So taking that into account is helpful as well.
Yeah, one thing that I think that a lot of veterans have difficulty with, at least I do, is when I speak, it's very frankly, and it can come off as aggressive or attacking, but it's not, because it's just matter of fact. And that's just kind of how, we've learned to deal with each other is, we understand that, everyone has feelings, but, a lot of times there isn't time to address those feelings immediately when you're, giving an order, taking an order, or whatever. And you just kind of, you deal with it you deal with it internally. And so if you're speaking with a veteran and they get it feels like they're being aggressive or they're, whatever. That's just probably how they've learned to deal with things. And that's just how they are now. And, they're trying to learn how to come back. I mean, I spent 23 years in the Marine Corps, and, we grunted at each other as a greeting, as an insult, as anything you can think of. George, everyone's laughing, but that's, I remember when I came out of boot camp, I was going into King Soopers, and, I was 18 years old, fresh out of boot camp, and some guy came out and immediately recognized that I was Marine, and he grunted at me and I grunted back. And my mom looked at me with such bewilderment, like, what was that? And I just said, oh, he's a Marine. And how do you know? You just do. And it's one of those things where, your mindset is completely different from your peers that you went to high school with, or, anything else that they don't have those experiences. And it's hard to replicate.
Paul, thank you that's such a great way to kind of be able for me to envision what community and common denominators look like in that example at the grocery store parking lot. I wish that we could continue the conversation all day. I really do. But we're getting close to the end, and I want to make sure that we have an opportunity to ask the panelists and Dr. Bars and Dr. Atkins, who are so intricately involved in this, what resources are available for veterans and service members and their families during this particular time. If you want to just take a second, I know we've posted some things in the chat, but if you would go ahead and address that, it would be great.
Sure, I'm happy to address that. There's so many resources. Of course, the VA, the Vet Center, also the STERM Center. So we just celebrated our 5-year anniversary, and we provide services to veterans no matter discharge status, combat status, or era. Also service members, including Guard and Reserve, and their families. So we provide therapy and assessment services for them. Also, I really like what George said about needing a sense of community. Not all veteran service members or their families are looking for psychotherapy, right? Sometimes it's being involved with organizations like the Mission Continues or Team Red, White, and Blue, where you're engaged in community projects to help the community. So there's many, many different resources. And we did put some in the chat, and we'll also put them on the website.
Yeah, and I'd like to state, you don't have to go to just these veteran services. I found a bunch of misfits on the rugby team because that's all I know is a bunch of misfits. And then we have the same values, we have fun, and we compete. And so it doesn't always have to be a veteran helping a veteran, because most of our lives we were under a microscope, and we were always had the light. And so we're sick of it, and we don't want to feel like we're being treated specially. And so let's just be a part of the community. Let's go find people. I got an Air Force veteran on the rugby team, and he's a lot older than I am, has kids, and we can connect there, and we can keep each other accountable. We can take care of each other. He didn't do what I did in combat arms, but his job was just as important as mine, working on helicopters and things of that sort. So go, and if you can't direct them to a veterans crisis line, or things like that, tell them, what are you interested in? Go join the finance club. Go join the rugby team. Go lift some weights. Do you want to come lift some weights with me? Get to know them. Just be a human to the veterans, because they're humans. We just honed in our craft, and we're really good at one thing, but we're also learning in others. So please be patient with us. And so that's all I like to say there.
So well said. That's thank you. From my perspective, just to, you continue to enlighten me. And I learn every time I sit with a group of veterans or service members, and I continue to. And so this has been really, really touching and really meaningful. I appreciate getting to just facilitate this today.
And if I may, just I serve these veterans every day, and I'm humbled as a veteran to work with. I'm humbled to work with veterans every day, and talk to George every day. It's a pleasure, and to hear Megan and Paul's stories today is it's always a humbling experience.
Beautifully said.
Thanks, Damon.
As we wrap up here today, I just want to truly give an enormous shout out and thank you to everybody who has shared with vulnerability and authenticity their stories and experiences and how we can support veterans at DU, and all of the experience with the Afghanistan withdrawal. And this is one of many conversations that we hope to have around this piece. I thought one of the coolest things we talked about was talking across differences and what that looks like with communication and how we honor intent versus impact, and those pieces that build community. And on a personal level, I lost one of my best friends who was a Marine to suicide, and it's just a powerful conversation to hear today. And I truly, truly thank you for your honesty and bravery. And Paul, at the risk of saying it, I thank you for all your service. I truly do. And I know there was such a devastating experience earlier this year, but Community Plus Values is honored to have this space. And this meant a lot to me on a personal level. So thank you so much. And with that, we will close the space today. We will be posting the resources on our activity cards, on our events, initiatives, and updates page on C+B. So visit there if you need any resources, need anything like that. And then we will have an upcoming C+B community talk in partnership with Heritage Months next week around disability employment awareness. And I'll be dropping that in the chat. And also don't forget to follow C+B on social media. That'll show opportunities to get involved with community and build a greater sense of belonging and inclusion. So we're on Instagram and Facebook, and every Tuesday we have wellness hours for snacks with 4D students, or the 4D experience. And then every Thursday we have free hot drinks and beverages for everybody in the community at Beans. So swing by between 9 and 11. And then Thursdays we're also having DU days. So if you wear your DU merchandise and one of our C+B grad fellows sees you wearing it, you can get a free t-shirt. And we're super excited to be partnering with the University of Denver bookstore on that piece, and 4D as well. So again, thank you all so much. It was such a powerful conversation, and wishing you all a good rest of your week. And we will talk soon. Thank you again.
All right, one more thing. Closing remarks. Everybody, please be hopeful. Smile, laugh, spread the joy. It is a time to mourn and be sad. But at the end of the day, we're here and we have this opportunity. So take advantage of it.
That's a perfect way to end it, George. Thank you so much.